This is part 2 of a conversation I had with Karin about parenting through the ages. We talk about breasts, we talk about taboos, misrepresentation, and how what is normal and natural has so often been wrongly categorized as dirty or unworthy of our attention. In a world balancing precariously on the precipice of extremism, it is to womenfolk we should turn for leadership, for guidance, and for insight. To not do so is to play into the hands of fascists. That journey led to disastrously inhumane consequences 100 years ago. We must not repeat those mistakes again. Listening to Karin talk about these topics and more besides was insightful and entertaining. Thank you, Karin, for your time, and I look forward to our next chat. Two on a mic, clocking out. Enjoy.
Dung weche pek kod welo mabiro etu under mic. Dung parodit kod jok mawuoye etu under mic. Seche tin sud buta wawinji etu under mic. Wola wachokre wabed piny bi wawinje ero chako moment ndi and a podcast makende.
Your blog, and it's called Familienleben einst und heute, which you're going to translate that to
family life.
okay.
Once and today, once and once and something like that.
Okay. Yeah. And there again, you kind of introduced the history to the topic of family life, bringing together the book and the blog in general. Why is it important, do you feel, for people to become kind of aware of this development?
Because that's the only way to get rid of it again. So if we want to get rid of sleep training and feeding on a schedule and even moms who want to breastfeed and can't breastfeed because they don't know how to, because breastfeeding is actually a socio-culturally learned skill and doesn't just happen. If we want to go back to that and enable parents to parent the way they want, they need to know why things are the way they are right now. And that's just, the history of the last 200, 300 years of parenting where everything basically has gone sideways.
Mm-hmm. And breastfeeding in itself, I don't know why, sometimes it comes up as a hot topic and then it goes away. And then after a few years again, it comes back and so on. And I think most people have seen female breasts at one point or other in their lives. Why is it so strange for some people to see a woman breastfeed in public?
Because breasts are sexualized, over-sexualized. They don't, so I think that's really the main reason, or the only reason, because we don't see breastfeeding anymore. I breastfed my children everywhere, like literally. I stood at the till and was handling the items I bought with one hand and the baby with the other one, literally. Okay. So and most of the time people don't realize that you're breastfeeding. They just see, okay, baby's probably sleeping or whatever. I made a point of being seen.
Okay. All right.
But although even you couldn't see skin, but
sure.
I think breastfeeding needs to be seen more.
Is that because you're German and so therefore you felt or you feel it's easier to do? Do you feel that
was back in Germany, but
okay, yeah. For me, in Germany, seeing a woman breastfeed or feeding her child with her breast is not at all odd. But is that the case still in the UK? Do you feel, because I do remember this while I was there in the UK, this conversation happening, and it's like, I don't want to see a woman feed her or breastfeed her child in a cafe while I'm eating. Thank you very much. And you think, okay, why? The child's got to eat too, right?
Yeah. It's actually, I don't know if this is just Scotland, but no, I think it's the whole of the UK, but you are legally allowed to breastfeed everywhere. So nobody can forbid that. I mean, you may have Hausrecht if you're in a cafe. But generally, nobody can forbid you from breastfeeding, and I think that's a good thing. I'm not sure if that's the case in Germany actually, if it's legally protected. But I was always, at the time when I was really involved with breastfeeding support and with the nationwide charity Arbeitsgemeinschaft Freie Stillgruppen, I was kind of hoping that someone would say something because I had the connections. I would have made it. I would have, I don't know, organized a sit-in or something like that. But nobody ever noticed. Nobody ever cared. I think most of the time, breastfeeding is just, it happens and nobody really realizes it.
Okay. All right. So do you get that feeling as well in the UK that it's this is a thing of the past, nobody really cares anymore?
I don't know. I mean, I did have a breastfeeding group here as well, but we didn't. That's also kind of funny. The breastfeeding support here in England is kind of different from what it is in Germany. So the mums want different things. The most common thing in Germany was that mum was handed the bottle in hospital and wanted to get rid of it. And the most common thing here is mum wanted to go back to work and want to introduce the bottle. So it's really weird.
Okay,
Sorry, yes?
I was just going to say that here, the nurses or the midwives told us in Germany, don't use the bottle too early because it's bad for the child's teeth. Is that also, is from your awareness, is that a relevant fact which is considered in the UK?
I'm not sure. I think was it really the teeth? That's interesting because usually they say it's a nipple confusion that they are worried about.
Okay.
So that the child will prefer one over the other and then not go onto the breast anymore when you introduce the bottle too soon, because breastfeeding should be established before you introduce the bottle for that reason. And it's a learning curve. So for the baby and for mum.
Okay. All right. I mean, obviously teething kind of comes into effect after a year anyway. But I mean, some children are breastfed a lot longer than that, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely. So there's an anthropologist called Karin Detweiler, and she has done some research on it's more of a thought process of she's been comparing great apes and their development and how long they breastfeed, and then made conclusions about how long humans would breastfeed if we weren't living in a society. She compared things like when was the weight gain tripled, or when did the molars come in, or when do they start puberty, and things like that. And she deducted from that normal duration of breastfeeding for a human would probably be somewhere between 2.5 and 7 years.
Okay, wow. So as far as 7?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All right. Yeah, I'm not familiar with anybody breastfeeding for that long at all, but yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
Because I was involved in a nationwide breastfeeding organization, I do actually know people who have breastfed that long, yes.
Wow. Okay. From your awareness, did that influence the relationship between mother and child, or between parents, for example, any more significantly than those at the lower scale who gave up breastfeeding earlier?
I don't think it makes a difference in relation for the relationship between parents and children. I don't think so. Okay. I know for a fact that women grieve over not being able to breastfeed. So when we were doing like stands on a fair promoting our breastfeeding counseling, usually not pregnant parents would come, but the grandmothers would come and they would tell us their story, because that sticks with you. That's the kind of thing that really sticks with you. And women were being failed left and right in breastfeeding support because just GPs just told them and pediatricians just told them, just give the bottle at the first sign of complications. Or we even had times in the 80s where they thought, breast milk has too many, what's Schadstoffe?
So
What's
damaging,
Schadstoffe?
yeah, I suppose damaging fluids or things that can poison the child.
Chemicals basically in it from the environment that would be detrimentally health wise, and formula would be much more healthy, completely leaving out of the equation that cows don't live in a vacuum. They are also exposed to chemicals just like us, but breastfeeding was really out for a while, and it slowly came back in the 90s, basically. And the thing is, moms want to breastfeed, and I think they should be supported to breastfeed. And if you don't want to breastfeed, that's fine too, but it should be a conscious decision, and it should be your decision and not someone else's.
And historically, has that always been a concern? So in the 80s, you said obviously breastfeeding went out. So that would suggest that before then, it was fine, considered the way to go.
Well, they didn't really have anything else, did they? I mean, they did. So that's getting complicated now, because this is regionally different, very different within Germany as well. So like in Bavaria, they stopped breastfeeding really, really early on. Like in the late 1800s, breastfeeding was basically not happening, and you can see that from the mortality rates of the babies. So whereas in the north of Germany, they would be breastfeeding like well into the second year. And we have breastfeeding rates in 1850s, 1880s of like mortality rates of 12.5% in the north of Germany and 50% in the south.
Wow.
Because they
so
weren't
significant.
Yes, definitely, absolutely. Because they weren't breastfeeding.
Well, if there's ever an argument for breastfeeding, you just made it.
Yeah, well, our formula is much, much better today, thankfully.
Yeah, but still, that kind of suggests that there are specific nutrients inherent within breast milk, which perhaps you can't replicate.
There's one thing that we will never be able to have in formula, and that's live antibodies. You have live antibodies in breast milk, and you can't put that in a powder.
One of the things that I keep coming back to when people ask me, why do you do your podcast, Zach? It's that I always learn new things. And that's particularly true here as well. Things that I would perhaps think that I should have a slightly better awareness of, having had 2 children, of course, even though I never participated in the breastfeeding myself, of course. Just one more question on that. Do you think that nowadays men are a bit better educated as to the demands on the women's body of the entire process of pregnancy and then thereafter breastfeeding? I'm referring to the activities that men cannot do themselves, that they cannot directly assist in themselves. Do you think that men are just better educated and in a better position to provide assistance when needed?
That's too general. I can't answer it like that, because there have been times, we always think that men weren't involved in child raising and in birth and stuff like that, but they were. So even in the 1800s, women would give birth sitting on their husband's laps. It's the idea that dads weren't present at birth really just came about when women started to go into hospital to give birth, and before that it was very much a family affair. So
in the movies, the women are always separated and the men are outside having a beer.
Don't get me started with the movies. Oh my God. Birth representation in movies. Oh. It's just not how it works.
Okay, so so basically, movies have really cultivated this completely erroneous depiction of labor.
That and yeah, and basically doctors. When we moved birth into hospitals, we made it go out of sight and out of mind for everyone. And no, and it's a taboo. Made it a taboo to talk about, and yeah, I think that was really detrimental for women and for children and for the family as a whole, because yeah, also men weren't really aware what their wives were going through because they didn't see it anymore.
And what about this thing about fainting? So why did it come up? Because people, I was there, and absolutely fainting was the last thing on my mind. Do you know when this became a thing? Why is it that...
Did it become a thing? I mean, I think it's a trope. I think it does happen occasionally, but is it a thing as such? I don't think so.
They don't mean planned fainting. Come on, you've got to do it after 3.5 minutes. But it's, yeah, for some reason, I don't know, maybe it was sort of propagated in as you say, like movies or some kind of a TV series or whatever. But yeah, I've been asked, did you faint?
Okay.
And yeah, but by a man, of course. But yeah, there seemed to be a thing. Okay.
Yeah, because we should talk about things like that more. You know, we should normalize giving birth. We should normalize talking to everyone about birth, not keeping it a secret amongst women. It's if birth for you is something that's, I don't know, just associated with pain and tearing or horrible things that can go wrong, of course you might faint, and of course you might find it really taxing to watch that, and maybe you feel a bit helpless as well when your wife or your partner is giving birth and you can't do anything about it. But yeah, I think a lot of preparation would help there, actually. And I mean, we do have courses for parents, not just like Geburtsvorbereitungskurse.
Yeah, birth preparation or
birth preparation courses for parents, not only for women. I think that's really important that also that the couple talks about birth beforehand and what everyone wants. And so basically the dad can be, spokesperson for his partner when she's in pain, and he knows what she wants, so he can fight the fights for her.
Yeah,
I mean, we're talking very heteronormative right now. It's
of course, yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, I think that they called them antenatal classes, if I'm not mistaken. But again, you're right. I think you touch on this point. For me, it's a novel thing to hear. For you, obviously, you're more than used to it being one of your specialty areas. But I mean, why is it that this would be such a taboo subject? Why is it that we can't sit down with genders and have this conversation about birth, the process of birth, as a completely normal subject? Surely everybody has gone through it at some point, having been born to a certain degree. Why can't we talk about it?
I think it's mainly to do with our Christian society, actually, because the sin of birth, the sin, all these bodily things that we just don't talk about. I mean, when I think back to my grandmother, and she told me how she once got visited from her priest, I think, while she was breastfeeding, and her milk was squirting out, and she was so embarrassed, and and the priest said, "No, it's fine. It's just how it's supposed to be." And but there's just so much taboo around anything, any bodily function, really. And it's just, I don't know. It shouldn't be like that. We should talk about things more. I think a lot of pain would go away if we knew what was actually normal, and that everyone experiences that, or a lot of people. Like, we have taboos around miscarriage. Nobody talks about miscarriage, and then you have one, and you find out a lot of people in my life have had one, because every fourth pregnancy does end in miscarriage, and that's a lot.
It's one of those hidden figures which
Yeah.
people aren't really aware of, but it's not a secret either.
Yeah.
But obviously, when somebody is pregnant, then that's kind of the last thing that people look at, is the rate at which miscarriages occur. Karin, we really have gone around the houses there with our conversations there, but thoroughly entertaining. And what's also cool is that it's kind of really set us up for sort of future topics where we're probably going to dive straight into the politics and then come back out and talk about gender equality and be really critical of some of the tropes and some of the bullshit that society has thrust upon us, if indeed that's okay for you.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Brilliant. Okay. Then all that remains for me to say is thank you very much for your time. And
Thanks for having me.
A pleasure. Absolutely.
Mike. Two and a mic.